PyreSwap show for Wisdom Wednesday. And we'll be making an announcement later today about some schedule changes because daylight savings time has occurred in the United States, in North America, and we're going to shift some shows around to optimize it for the future. I have a lot of bullish stuff to talk about. It might not seem incredibly bullish to you, but I'll explain why. Everybody who's talked to me today, they have told me that I emanate this bullish energy, which they're welcome to see. And there's a lot of bullish things happening because Bitcoin broke its all-time high recently. In fact, I think it was yesterday. And we talked a little bit before about PyreSwap being in the cross-section of GameFi and DeFi. And Donald Trump has apparently been picked as president by the Associated Press. And if you guys aren't aware, he also launched a DeFi project less than a month ago, or his sons did, or something like that. And I think that this is good for the narrative, if that makes sense. But anyways, I am just overall like really glad to be back. Like, I want you to know that if you've felt this absence from the show, perhaps it's been a little bit more poignant than you expected. I want you to know that a lot of extremely focused work was done on making this project blow up over the last couple days. I want you guys to understand something. And I really do mean this. It's my goal and my intention that this DApp is what perpetuates the Phantom Opera to the future. And there's a couple things you guys can understand about how this DApp kind of continues to exist the same way that a chain can. So I don't know if you guys have gone to the website recently, but there's roughly between 40 and 60 longtime validators of the Phantom Opera. Do you guys know that? There's between 40 and 60 of them. The same way that 40 to 60 people, and arguably it's not even 40 to 60 because we know of a few people that have multiple. The same way that 40 to 60 people can keep the Phantom Opera going, that same ratio applies to how PyreSwap keep going. You don't need more than a few dozen people, or even a dozen or less sometimes, playing the IWV to keep the project moving towards the future. Does that make sense? Because as soon as the incants are distributed, you only have 6 hours left until it happens again. And it's that type of forwardness that keeps us moving forward. I know that a lot of people misunderstand this project. And if I can make one thing clear, it's if there's anything to be bullish about, it's how long this project has been going and how long it will continue, which is perpetually. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Now, as far as making this DApp, the thing that makes the Phantom Opera as a chain exist perpetually, there's a couple things that need to happen. And one, that means that we need to acquire user base that is not yet already on the Phantom Opera. What I mean by that is every user that's on the Phantom Opera right now, we should assume is already aware of this Exodus event to Sonic. Now, whether you're bullish or bearish on this Exodus event is up to you. But generally speaking, in order to shore up what could possibly be that dearth of user base, we need to create the case for new capital, new eyeballs, and new interest to come to Phantom Opera, even without a foundation behind it. I hope that makes sense. And it's my goal to actually hit that target. Just to be clear. And I hope you guys are listening to me. And I appreciate there's a few people here. Okay, fantastic. So, do you guys have any questions? We have a lot of great stuff happening. Actually, we have a link tree now. And do you guys know what a link tree is? Hell yeah, you guys are chatty today. Damn, you guys will not shut up. One question at a time, please. One question at a time. Could I ask you guys to slow down? Hey, thank you, Maddie. Maddie, again, we just don't stop here. And Arguably, you know what? It looks like our tokens are actually up today. That might just be because Bitcoin is up. I want you guys to know, like, we're gonna hit all the targets we set. We're hitting every peg. We're hitting every peg. We're hitting peg on projects we haven't launched yet. To be clear, in order for us to succeed at those projects, we need to have systems in place to continue getting new eyeballs. Because right now, it doesn't make sense to launch a tomb fork successfully. Everybody you market to, they're going to think of a tomb fork as a collapsing Ponzi scheme. If we launch them with terminal utility built in from day one, they can in fact be self-sustaining from day one. But this is the type of detail that not everybody who already knows what a tomb fork is going to even waste time understanding. They're going to believe that this is another false promise from another charlatan in Web3, which, as you and I both know, they happen to be everywhere. I want you guys to know we have some newer, more compelling statements on our link tree, if you guys happen to visit it. And by the way, we will be announcing, we will be making an announcement today with some schedule changes, and I'll include a link tree as well. This right here in our link tree is really like our bio statement, and it says PyreSwap gives you the same power that central bankers have so they can't own you. You're going to see this, like, this is our most compelling benefit statement ever. And I really want you guys to think about this statement and how the words feel. PyreSwap gives you the same powers that central bankers have, so they can't own you. And I mean this is true. If you've listened or read our features and benefits, there's something called an endogenous money system, which I've talked about a bit in the past. In fact, let me see if I can pull it up. Okay, and I'm on screen share now. Endogenous money, and if you look at our features, PyreSwap is the most comprehensive, robust, powerful endogenous money system in Web3, and I mean that by the bottom of my heart. And the reason we call this endogenous is because the money supply is not being controlled by a central authority. Because an exogenous money system is what a central bank is. Does that make sense? A central bank mandates and decides what the money supply should be. It's a bunch of people making a decision. It's a power reserved for a privileged elite. They veil it with calculus and vocabulary and jargon that the majority of people don't understand. And they do this in every single country, or in the Euro, the ECB as well, or in the Euro. Does that make sense? They always make it something austere, something elite. Does that make sense? Thank you, Alessio. Well, Maddie, believe it or not, it isn't that. Yeah, like it isn't the ability to swap it for gas that gives the benefits, because the gas, like while that's useful, what it really does is we're driving a surge of consistent demand for the gas token. So if you've seen it before, Maddie, when we have our smart contracts on the top 10 gas guzzlers list, we often get 2 of them at a time up there sometimes, right? That right there is what's creating this consistency to gas demand. And that is, I guess you could say, what we do for the gas token. Like that's the point of that. But Maddie, the gas token is not an endogenous money system. Yeah. So an endogenous money system it gives the power to the people, to the community, to decide what supply is. And the people, at any time, at least through things like meterage and the boardroom printing, not so much Genesis. Genesis is kind of exogenous, but Genesis does not last forever. It's through the utilization of these interfaces that we decentralize the responsibility of money supply. So that way that money supply is always being regulated by the actors, by the community. And people don't even realize that that's what they're doing. They don't necessarily have to focus on the fact that they are changing the supply. Like, this just happens based on market conditions. Like, when the supply needs to get crunched, it'll get crunched. And when it needs to expand, it gets expanded. I hope that makes sense. That right there, in a nutshell, is what the power of central bankers is. Yeah, central bankers, they, when Jerome Powell is making an interest rate decision, he is in fact deciding what the change to money supply should be. And it's from him doing this that it affects the cost of things throughout the economy. They do this to fight inflation or deflation. They try to make things steady priced. And overall, based on what they know, they believe that they are in the correct for doing this a certain way. I will argue myself that considering the scenario, I think Jerome Powell does honestly believe, does arguably do what he thinks is best. And I don't mean what's best for him. I believe that he's extremely, I believe that Jerome Powell is probably the opposite of corrupt, to be clear. I think that he has that level of self-control. He seems extremely stoic, which bankers often are. But the ability to do this and the ability to manage money supply and the ability to build your own credit with instruments that you're not at the behest of governments deciding on their own that they're going to inflate, that they're going to increase, national debt by 10 trillion or whatever, or that they're going to start a loan program to small businesses and then immediately wipe out the debts of all that money they created. And you can in fact shelter yourselves from the fallout of their policies. Because if you can't shelter yourself from the fallout of central banking policies, the central bank to some degree owns you. I just want that to be clear. I want this part of the statement to feel negative, because it is negative. What we're really trying to do here in Web3 is to actually free, and I guess you could say liberate people from systems like this. This was an extremely important narrative in Bitcoin, in the original Bitcoin. And the fact that the money was controlled peer-to-peer, and the fact that it was all predetermined, nobody could, it was a corruption-resistant system. These were all its selling points. Like, this was something that really solved a lot of the problems involving human nature and how it abuses these type of things. And I want you guys who are with me today to understand that, like, we're all on a journey to really be part of that cure. There's a lot of money to be made in delivering that cure. Yeah, we're really at this slingshot point in this project. You might not see it yet, but I think a lot of people have trouble understanding how a new dimension being introduced can create exponential change. So, thank you, Avelito. Thank you so much for those kind words. And I appreciate you guys for having like the consistency to stay with me too, because I know that a lot of the community, they get distracted, right? They get worried, they get concerned. But like I'm only like humbled in admiration by how like strong in character a lot of you guys are, truly. Imagine if you will that you're inside an apartment building that has a fire. A fire is out of control. And you can see this fire and it's burning things. It's just spreading slowly from piece of furniture to piece of furniture, right? The fire is just going on this trend. Does that make sense? And the fire is going to be bounded by the system of the apartment it's in. Does that make sense? The fire's the fire's direction is going to be controlled by the building and the furniture inside the building. Do you guys understand what I mean allegorically, like metaphorically here? I hope you do. Now, if you were to measure like the direction and the rate at which the fire is moving and or spreading, you might think that like we're just going along this incredibly predictable trend, right? But what I want you guys to understand is this fire could go from growing to rapidly shrinking, in fact, exponentially shrinking, if something else happens. And that other thing could be a sprinkler setting off. Does that make sense? All it takes is a sprinkler setting off in order for entirely new dimensions to be added to this problem. Because all of the sprinkler systems, they're charged with water. And that water is not part of the system that the fire is benefiting from. Does that make sense? So when you set off a sprinkler, you're actually, you can think of hundreds of liters or hundreds of gallons or thousands of liters or thousands of gallons, whatever you want. They're now being introduced into the same system where the fire is, but also having the ability to spread out more. Does that make sense? So all it takes is one sprinkler setting off, and you can have a problem that might be looking like it's going linearly this direction, and then suddenly it just goes up exponentially that direction. I want you guys to know that we canceled a couple of shows, right? We canceled some shows, and I was also not exactly active on Discord the last couple of days. But because of our ability to carve out this focused time, we are literally on the precipice of adding a new dimension to the system we're in. And I mean that in the most bullish way possible. This has taken so long, but it's going to be so worth it. I can just tell. A lot of things in the storyline of this project, I wanted them to work out a certain way, but they turned out to work out even better than I wanted them to. A lot of things, yeah. I never thought we would acquire 2-0. I never thought we would. I'm not even going to keep going. But a lot of things have turned out better than expected. And I'm just so, I can't explain why, but I'm just so incredibly bullish on what we're about to do next. Because I think we've really, really gotten surgically specific with how to solve this giant problem that this project and all of Web3 has. I want you guys to know that my goals are not just repegging the tomb forks, even though I think that is the proof of our concept. Like, my goal is to get this project to a $1 billion market cap as an aggregate. Yeah, divided among coins, not all in one. Yep. And sometimes my methodology might not be easy to understand, but I know that if I do what it takes to scale us to a $1 billion market cap, I'm going to be able to knock out all the other small things too. Small things including TVL, TWAP, volume, user base, incantation players, channelers, the gas cost on AVAX. All of these small things will just get bulldozed by the solution that solves them all at once. This is also an example of leverage, which is actually technically related to the idea of banking. But yeah, welcome back to the PyreSwap show. We're glad you guys are with us. I think, for whatever reason, things get timed. certain things about this project have been timed in a way that make it feel like it's the hand of destiny. And I just mean that so sincerely. I hope you can tell from my tonality. Even if you don't speak English as a first language, like I hope you can really hear how I feel right now. I have been gifted with so much clarity right now. And for the longest time, for the last few months, there has been so much fogginess. There has been so much ambiguity. I did not understand what I didn't understand about marketing. So I have exponentially increased my grasp of what this is all about. And I have a newfound appreciation and marvel for the power of marketing. And I hope that I hope very soon that you guys will too. Oh, and don't forget teamwork. Teamwork is also nothing short of magical. Anyways, do you guys have any questions? Yeah, thank you, Abuelito. Thank you, Maddie. Thank you, Dr. Mac. Yeah, do you guys have any questions? By the way, and I want to say this to the channelers. It's not a failure when 9 people comply and 1 person doesn't. It's a success that you got 9 people to comply. Does that make sense, Maddie? Yeah. Like, whenever you're doing the job of a channeler, like, you don't want to think about your failures or your shortcomings. You want to think about, like, what you're getting right. Because you really only need to consistently get that much right to actually solve people's problems. Like you being consistent, like if you're getting 90% of it right, like consistently, or even 80%, like that's just so amazing. You can do a lot with that. I know that might not be completely clear to you. We're gonna be, building this leaderboard. The leaderboard is not coming just yet, but it'll be very soon. And this leaderboard will illuminate a lot of, it'll help you guys do your job as channelers, and it'll also, I think, begin to demonstrate some of our future use cases that we talk about. I think you guys have already heard about that though, but I want you guys to know that a lot of amazingly beneficial stuff has happened lately, and I know that maybe you guys continue to exercise your patience with this project, and I do too, and I want you guys to know that patience will all be worth it. Yeah, I have never been more certain of anything in my heart. Truly. Yeah. Again, this project can't die, to be clear. Like, you know what I mean? If again, I most of the time, people do marketing in advance before they even build the project. You guys have heard of these projects where, like, they're launching a chain and, they're marketing for it like a year in advance. Do you guys know what I mean? Yeah, they do it all up front. And, I was hyper focused on, like, just getting tokenomics to do something cool. And I didn't realize that during the development phase, we still could have been generating attention up front. But I wanted to, out of my responsibility, I wanted to make sure that it worked before we stampeded people into it. Does that make sense? And I realized that we'll never have to do that again, because after we make this work, we'll never lack eyeballs again. Does that make sense? Because this is going to, again, shift the paradigm and change what people believe is possible in Web3. And possibly economics in general. Yeah, very true, Abuelito, yeah. It's from us doing this opposite approach that a lot of things are unconventionally true here. Yeah. I think that doing it this way was a great demonstration of our ethics. And what I realize is that It's only you guys who are the true early adopters. I want you guys to understand something. There's going to be, for every one of you that's listening to this right now, there's going to be 100 people who never watched this PyreSwap show, at least. Does that make sense? Sooner than you might think. And they're never going to get what you got, which was watching the story of this project take place. I know a lot of you guys have seen the YouTube video for the origin story, and I want you guys to know that I think that this project is part of an ongoing story. I think the origin story was just the chapter 1. And all the things that we're going to do here, like, they're all going to be worth telling a story about. And you guys are part of that story. Does that make sense? PyreSwap gives you the same powers as central bankers, so they can't own you. I don't know if you guys can tell just from like the shift of that statement, like that statement right there is so much more compelling than like most things we that doesn't mean that having those powers makes things easy. Because the truth is that with great power comes great responsibility. But I think for the few of you that have been through this gauntlet, I think that we've all grown in responsibility. Thank you, Seabiscuit. But I don't know if you guys can tell, but like the level of that statement's being compelling, like as far as the marketing statement goes, it is significantly more compelling than anything that we have really that's a serious level up. I'll just get it there. You guys are hearing that statement for the first time. Soon it'll be one of the statements people hear for the first time when they hear about this project. And more on that later. I want you guys to know we also have an elevator pitch. And an elevator pitch is really something that you can use to describe what the project does in a way that verbally markets it. And this elevator pitch, it basically goes like this. It says, you know how the modern banking system is an abomination that serves only special interests? Well, what PyreSwap does is it takes the same powers that central banking has, that modern banking has, and it gives it to its users so that they can free themselves. I actually think let me practice this a few more times. This elevator pitch is relatively new. It's a new strategy, et cetera, et cetera. Anyways, I'll put that in the announcement. How about that? I'll put that in the announcement. Yeah. And I love to get people's feedback on it too. Oh, by the way, as far as the features and benefits video, a lot of people have said how good the features and benefits video is. And yeah, special thanks to my producer for building that video. Yeah, so that video is considered across the board a hit. But anyways, yeah, we're gonna put that video on the landing page. We're not gonna put 6 videos. Yeah, so I think in my announcement I said we're gonna do 6 videos. We're gonna keep it 4 videos. What we're gonna do is we're gonna replace the IWV demo on the landing page with the features and benefits video, because the IWV demo, we already linked to it now on the stake page. If you guys saw the change in the warning label, did you guys see that? I imagine you guys have seen that link now. Our famous orange warning label. Yeah, so we already linked to it there. So I think that is probably the best place to put it. Whereas on the landing page, we'll stick to features and benefits, because what I've learned is the stuff that I like about PyreSwap is not what other people always like about PyreSwap. Does that make sense? And I think that my passion and like insistence and like me proving these weird theoretics, I think also helps people understand how convicted I am. But I realize that this is not a project that's primary purpose is for Five to be able to say, I told you so. Does that make sense? Like Five's purpose, like PyreSwap's purpose is not for Five to literally, fulfill some I told you so fantasy. Does that make sense? Now that right there is a huge motivator for me, but that's not the project's purpose. Does that make sense to you guys? Like the project's purpose is to really serve its user base, right? Like add value to them, right? Be something they continually get value from, right? Whether it be educational or financial, right? Anything like that. Or even entertainment, right? Whatever you want. And I realized that like when it comes to marketing, it's not about me talking about my motivations, which is when I talk about features and stuff, I think about, I realize that like the only reason that I know this stuff is because of how deep in my niche I am, but I can expect nobody to care about this stuff. I think part of the reason I did it is because I see other projects in Web3, they brag about their features. Do you guys know what I mean? Where like, I have no idea why I would care about this. Do you guys know what I mean? Do you guys know about like, let's say new chains getting launched and these new chains have like a feature and it's like I don't like that seems cool, but until you're talking to the person who fulfills that use case, it's like I still only sense that you're hyped about it. Do you guys know what I mean? For instance, there's a chain that is now over a year old. It's called SUI. Do you guys know that? SUI? Or you guys know the one, right? It's like top 20 market cap now. It crept up quite a bit in the last year. I was being shilled SUI like a year ago, right? And like I arguably just said no because I didn't care. And I still kind of don't. Because I consider myself, I'm the fucking DApp architect that Web3 is waiting for. Therefore, that's great you're launching a new chain. Until I build on it, you're only getting silver medal dApps. You know what I mean? So one thing that SUI can do is that you can sponsor gas for a smart contract. Meaning, if you run a dApp that people like interact with in real life, they don't have to pay their own gas if you're willing to comp them. Does that make sense as a developer? And to me, this is like, okay, that's kind of centralized, but I get it. And the fact of the matter is that this is one of the big selling points of SUI. Like, it's like this feature. And it's like, well, like, have people been saying that the reason dApps don't take off is because people don't want to spend gas? Because people use credit cards all the time and they pay interest. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like an extra fee stopping them there. Do you guys know what I mean? Like, people pay sales tax in the United States, it gets tacked on at the end. That also doesn't stop that. I think that a lot of the things that people brag about were also like the fact that it was able to exceed the TPS of the Bitcoin network or shit like that. And it's like, hey, it broke this record. This project broke Bitcoin's record in less time. I want you guys to know this as well. PyreSwap has also broken records from Bitcoin. Does that make sense? Do you guys know what I mean? Like Bitcoin didn't have a transaction for its first 18 months. Are you guys aware? Like the first 18 months of Bitcoin, there was like no transactions. It was people mining and talking about mining. And like one guy bought a pizza. Do you guys know about Bitcoin pizza? A guy named Laszlo in May, he bought a pizza for 20,000 Bitcoin. Yeah. Like, so what I mean to say is, PyreSwap, every single one of these tokens has, beaten Bitcoin's record as far as getting its first transactions. Do you guys know what I mean? So like, we don't brag about that though, because that's fucking apples to oranges. Do you guys know what I mean? Like that's a crazy weird thing to brag about. Do you guys like, hey guys, now that Satoshi Nakamoto did all this work of putting the idea of blockchains into people's heads, because it's so much easier to launch a Web3 project now, we've broken his records. And anyways, I'm not trying to sound negative. You get what I'm saying? But when I was writing the features list, and I'm probably going to leave it that way as well. We might embed the benefit video in that on that page of the docs. I was also writing it like emulating the way that I see other projects brag about features in Web3. And I realized like that right there is something stupid as fuck in Web3. Do you guys understand? Do you guys get what I'm saying? Because when you guys read the features list, and I know I'm talking to people that might actually understand over the half the features, right? Like you guys that I'm talking to now probably actually understand over half, right? But anybody who's learning about it for the first time, it is a bunch of economic jargon, right? It's monetary, financial, and economic jargon, right? It doesn't really explain what it does, but it links to Wikipedia like 16 times, right? And I realized that and by the way, I'm really glad I made the PyreBot write that message, by the way. Because that message is about to get really, really useful. Human brains, they begin processing what you're trying to teach them as soon as they get the indication that they can benefit from what you're trying to teach them. So, believe it or not, this does not even mean to imply that humans are necessarily self-centered, but rather, like, our brains are designed to actually maintain a resilience against distractions, because if we're not convinced that something new might benefit us, we actually shield ourselves from looking at that so we can focus on what we're actually focused on. Just making sure that's clear. And if you don't address like immediately why what you're building or what you're doing or what you're bringing to market can benefit somebody, you can't even get them to give you the time of day to listen to why. Like first, you make a compelling benefit statement that they don't even believe right away. So when I say things like PyreSwap gives you the same powers that central bankers have, so they can't own you, I want you guys to understand that this is not a statement that is meant to convince everybody on first glance. It's actually meant to put them into a skeptical and inquisitive state. Do you guys understand what I mean? You make an extremely bold promise that you're actually able to back up. Because Seabiscuit, when they're like, what you're trying to do is you're trying to trick them into like seeing if it's true. Does that make sense? Like to be honest, you know, Mr. Producer, we were actually talking about it earlier. Like when 2016, when Trump was running, like nobody believed that he was going to actually win 2016. Do you guys know what I mean? It was like everybody was just like glued. Do you guys remember this? Everybody here's old now, you know, so like you remember, like everybody's like, there's no way that this is actually going to happen. I think Hillary was like 89% winning. Do you guys know what I mean? But it was still like, exactly, Seabiscuit. Yeah, like, is that right? Yeah, like, what do you mean by that? So you're not even trying to get them to like you on that first statement. You're trying to get them to actually like worry that they might be wrong and you might be right. Like, you just be as bold as possible. PyreSwap gives you the same powers as central bankers, so they can't own you. Part of this statement in the back is it's a problem that you're curing. It's kind of ambiguous. It's a put down. Nobody likes the feeling of getting owned. Would you guys agree? Feeling that a central banker owns you, like, can you guys feel that? Like on your head and your arms? That is just such a not a good feeling to have, right? But we're preventing that feeling because we're giving you the same power that central bankers have. And the more evidence that they're now willing to investigate on their own, this is now your opportunity to convince them more and more that your solution actually does what it's promised. Does that make sense? So yeah, you don't actually lead with I want you to like me. Yeah, you start off with big, bold promise that actually puts them into an inquisitive state. Yeah, like you want them to actually kick your tires. Because if you've got good tires, why would you care if they kick them? Right? Right? Anyways. I'll be making an announcement in a couple hours concerning the schedule change for the PyreSwap show because we're going to change a few of the days. And yeah, we only have good things coming. Yeah. Like a lot of stuff that's happened in the last 4 days, 5 days, really weak. Like it's really been like game changing and like leaps and bounds. Everything is accelerating now too. Like all of the processes that we were I literally felt like Sisyphus pushing a boulder for the longest time. I felt like I was pushing something and then sliding back down the hill. You know, we had a Reddit strategy. Did you guys know about the Reddit strategy? We have suspended the Reddit strategy because the reason the Reddit strategy was not working is because I wasn't focused on getting one thing right. One thing right at first. Does that make sense? But now I'm laser focused and like we're getting to the finish line. Yeah. And by the way, Alessio, did you hear what I said about how a new dimension can create exponential change? Okay. Well, yeah, there will be a recording of this. Yeah. And what I mean to say is, I don't want to sound too bullish, but in Web3, sometimes all that's missing is one linchpin component, and then you can go 100x inside of 30 days. Would you guys agree that so many projects go 100x in 30 days, and people are like, what happened? You know what happened? Is they finally got the recipe right. What happens is they figure out the final ingredient, and when that final ingredient falls into place, everything just explodes. This has happened to me in the past before as well. I want to tell this story actually. Yeah, we've got how much time here? Audio glitch? Oh shit. Check now. What about now? Okay, yeah. Sorry, I was getting a call. Okay, I think what I was saying was this. I want you guys to understand that inside crypto, things can go 100x inside of 30 days. Right now, we're about 60% done with our Genesis. Our Genesis ends in the middle of January. Does that make sense? So we're in the beginning of November. Does that make sense? Yes. So the component, when the missing component, oh, Alessio again. When the missing component is finally placed, things can just go exponential because if we, think of it like this. Imagine that we're revving our engine as hard as we can, but our car doesn't yet have tires on the ground. We don't have tires on the road yet. Does that make sense? So as soon as we put tires on the car, the shit will just take off. Does that make sense to you guys? As soon as you put wheels on the thing, all that work on the engine, all that work in the transmission, right? It's just gonna go. Do you guys understand? So what I mean to say is, and you should rewatch it anyway because I talk about a fire sprinkler. What I mean to say is, in crypto, that stuff is possible. And I'm gonna tell a story of when this happened to me in the past. So I used to sell insurance. This is actually the first job that I had that involved financial instruments. And before I sold insurance, I worked as a Navy nuke on a submarine. And I want you to understand that my background made me a little bit arrogant about how good I was at things. And I could memorize things better. I could memorize scripts better. I could definitely work harder than everybody else. And I wasn't winning at life insurance sales. I wasn't winning. I went from being last in my office out of like 30 people to being 12th out of 4,000 internationally. And that was in a 6-week period. That was a 6-week period. Inside a 6-week period, I figured out one thing I was doing wrong, and I went from being last, like legitimately making $50 a week, to making like $5 grand a week. Does that make sense to you guys? So in a 6-week period, I went from making $50 a week, meaning like losing money working, to making $5 grand a week. This was maybe like 8 years ago. This is a real story. And all it took was one final missing component in what I was doing wrong, and I wasn't aware of what I was doing wrong. And what I learned in my life insurance office, I was getting crushed by people who, I was in my late 20s at the time, but I was getting crushed by like 21-year-old bartenders who I feel like didn't know jack shit. I was getting crushed by people who I thought that like, there's no way that this person works harder than me or is smarter than me or is more tenacious than me. Or like, you know, I was ex-military and I worked on submarines. I had already worked with like 100-hour work weeks. So like I felt that I was, you know, I just had more mental toughness than them. And I learned that the one thing I was doing wrong was that I was reacting negatively to things that I didn't need to react negatively to. Yeah. Like I was being negative about things which caused me to take less risks in my job. So I was getting counseled by the guy who ran the agency because he's like, I know you work really hard. I don't know why you're scoring so low. And I had one conversation with him. And he asked me about like everything that happened in the past week. And I told him, and he said like, instead of him giving a shit about any of the things that I mentioned, he just said like, I'm going to say something that I don't want to offend you. Like I want this to be of value to you, and I want this to be something that you use to like really change your life and really take it to the next level. But everything I heard you say about what happened in the last week, it was entirely negative. You told an entirely negative story where not a single positive thing happened. And I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, like you react negatively. Like you think negatively, you are subconsciously being negative. And this was just such a drastic difference to what I thought the problem was. Like I thought the problem might be external to me. And he's like, no. You subconsciously are being negative where you don't need to be negative. And it's because you're being negative that you're not seeing the actions you can take to actually win the game. Good news, guys. Negativity is not the problem this time around. I mean, sometimes it is with a few of you in the chat, but again, that's your problem and not mine. When I decided to listen to his advice, I literally read a book. This book was called The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale. And this book changed my life because it actually just taught me to just think positively. And when you think positively, you will see the opportunities and the maneuvers you can make to improve your situation. If you think negatively, you're already going to prejudge your world as having less available to you. So you're never going to be able to solve your problems because you're always going to assume that it's worse than it is. So the week after that counseling, I read the book. Like I read it immediately. I started listening to it on audio in my car. So I was just listening to this book again and again and again. I listened to this book like 5 times in a row. I read it like once or twice. And within the next week, like within 3 weeks, and I just got serious about my presentation. And I really dialed in exactly every word I was going to say. And within 2 weeks, I was already doing better than I'd ever done before. Within 2 weeks, like I was already like setting new records for myself. Does that make sense? Within 2 weeks of learning this flaw that I had internally, this shortcoming that was mine and my own, within 2 weeks, it was a night and day difference for me. Within 6 weeks, I was in the top 20 on the planet in my trade out of 4,000. Yeah. So top 20 out of 4,000 is like half of 1%. I mean, it's very fucking, yeah. Does that make sense to you guys? So again, 6-week period. To call it a night and day difference does not do justice to it. Yeah, I went from making, again, $50 a week to $5,000 a week, which by the way, that's a 100x. Do you guys understand? One small component that I had to adjust 100x'd my efficiency at being a life insurance sales agent. This story is 1,000% true. Definitely at least 100% true. Yeah. And just like that, things like that are fundamentally true as well throughout life. Yeah. Like once you get the recipe in, 100x. And that really is that's what drives the adrenaline, isn't it? That's what gets everybody's hearts beating. Anyways, I don't know why I feel so inspired today, but I just felt like this shiny white light energy like the last day or two. Yeah, I know everybody's tired. I know everybody's drained. I know everybody's impatient. I know. Yeah, I know. And it's just going to be a little while longer. Like, we are going to make it. Like, we're not going to just make it, like, by the way. Like, not just make it. Like, I'm pretty sure that this will end up better than you ever could have expected. Because that has been a running theme in this project. Because if there's any consolation to why we're always behind schedule, it's that for whatever reason, the results always exceed expectations. I hope you guys understand what I'm saying. Yeah. For the price of patience, we exceed expectations. Yeah. Maddie, 100%. Yeah. Yeah, go on, Elzio. Yeah. Yeah, I have 100 DMs I haven't responded. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Veloce. Yeah, okay. I answered this before as well. Is that the one? Okay, yeah. Veloce, literally, he has a wife and kids, and he had, like, bandwidth. The last real development that was on the contract side was the version 2 of Genesis. So that was in July. You guys remember that? So, like, there hasn't been development on the contract side since July. Like, there have been adjustments to the emission curve and stuff. Does that make sense to you guys? So, yeah, like his bandwidth, he's, he was, the Seniority Circus is a volunteer organization. So, like, I'm not entitled to anybody's contribution. Does that make sense? Like, everybody has been able to contribute when they can. A good example of this is also Zero Kex. Maddie, you remember, like, Zero Kex, when the channelers were first being built, he was there for, like, the first month every single day, right? Do you remember this? Yeah. And then all of a sudden, he just disappeared, right? And the thing is, like, that doesn't invalidate how useful his contributions were. So, Veloce, again, he built, like, all of the fucking contracts. He built the meterage, meeting, and he built the Ignition Witchfall. Like, he built all that. Like, that's like forever contributions. He's done more for this project than the vast majority of people, right? It just doesn't. There's no. Over the summer, Kia Dezo was asking for more and more work, and Veloce was making less and less appearances. So, like, that is kind of like the natural progression. This does not imply that, like, there's any ill will or problems. It's just that, like, that's where things are at right now. Kia Dezo has been wanting to work on the contracts more and more. He was the original builder of the Genesis contract. So, like, Veloce was kind of, like, finishing what Kia Dezo was building. Does that make sense? But yeah, Veloce was, working so hard on this, end of 2023 and early 2024. Like, so, like, this is sometimes just how it works. Yeah, exactly. So, but again, Alessio, Veloce isn't dead. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he still shows up to things inside the Senior Circus. Yeah. He showed up to one of the last developer meetings, and he showed up to the roundtable today a little bit. So, like, it's just that, like, yeah. Maddie, yeah. Maddie, if he wants, yeah. If he wants, but Maddie, I want you to know, like, I'm not entitled to anybody's contribution. Like, we're not entitled. Like, we figure it out no matter what. I want you guys to understand, we started off with Lest and Cool and Tosca and Rosari. We've had, Veloce is still around. We have 4 devs that literally we've never heard from again. Yeah, like, 2023 was an apocalypse for us. 2023 was an apocalypse. So, like, Veloce being, technically not working right now doesn't really, like, there's nothing really being built on the dev side. Kia Dezo and Crypto Nick are doing the leaderboard. Does that make sense? Yeah, Veloce was never required for the leaderboard. Yeah, but like I don't have any ill will, to be clear. Yeah, like everything was clear. It's just like, hey, you know, this is where things are at. Okay, let me. Okay. Oh yeah, that's literally like I have talked about this a dozen times. Yeah, I might have not talked about it recently, but yeah, we have in fact migrated the liquidity and then borrowed it. Yeah. The whole point of this, the whole point of doing this. This liquidity, like again, goes months without interaction. Does that make sense? So I want you to know when I did that, yeah. Oh, but to do what? Alessio, to pay for all of this going forward. Like I continue to work full time on this. Legitimately. Yeah. Like so the electricity to run the PyreSwap show is being paid for by that. Yeah. Like this light and that light are being paid for by it. Yeah, 100%. 100%. Yeah. Like it actually funds the project. It actually funds the project. Yeah. It has bought equipment for the project. It has bought marketing for the project, right? The stickers that we have, they got bought for it. There's not a lot of money. We still have most of the money. Does that make sense? Like we're not short on money, but the fact of the matter is that is the liquidity was most of that interaction. So for the spooky LP, for the spooky liquidity, the last person that interacted with it was depositing into it like 4 months before we took it. Does that make sense? And then before that, it was like 6 months and like nobody was touching it. Does that make sense? The investors get depressed. The investors get so depressed they just leave the money behind. Within the laws of abandoned property, we have the ability to just take that money. We're not doing that. We're just migrating it because, first of all, moving the liquidity over to PyreSwap helps the incantation. Does that make sense to you guys? Obviously, we deepen the TVL manually. Alessio, we did this with the redemption liquidity. Do you remember the redemption transplant? This is the same thing he's describing. Yeah, we did the exact same thing. Yeah. This is the exact same thing. We've now done it with the redemption liquidity. We've done it with the pancake swap, and now we've done it with spooky. So we just did it 3 times over the year. So to be clear, those 3 times have like funded this project for the year. Does that make sense? It's not a lot of money. It's been like maybe like 60 grand. Yeah. I think a lot of like one of the reasons we do it as well, this liquidity goes months without interaction, right? We still have like a good fraction of that too. Like, so it's not like we're just like gambling with it or whatever. I'm not playing meme coins with that money. Like, holy shit. Like, again, yeah, like that money gets fucking used critically. Yeah. This liquidity goes months without interaction. Does that make sense? Oh, Alessio, AVAX is the coin that's easiest for me to turn into fiat. Yeah, that is a Gemini wallet. Yeah, that's a Gemini wallet. Or something. Does that make sense? Yeah, that is a wallet on my centralized exchange. Like, I don't have the AVAX anymore. Yeah. Just to be clear. Yeah, but the to be clear, we keep the liquidity that belongs to our investors on separate wallets. Just to be clear. Yeah. Like we do isolate that. So I'm not mixing that money with like circus house money. Does that make sense? To be clear? Anyways, this liquidity goes months without interaction. Then we're literally moving it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like, does that make sense? Alessio, exactly. Do you know why? Because I can pay that debt off double once we go to pay. So, first of all, I don't like doing this anytime I do it. I end up doing this because It's an autocratic decision that I can do to actually help rescue the people I'm trying to rescue. Does that make sense? Because, Alessio, if I can bring 2 ohm and 2 share 10x, think about how much Phantom I can buy back now. Does that make sense? It's so much easier to buy back half of that with Phantom because I withdrew liquidity. Does that make sense? By the way, Alessio, when I did that, that's one of the reasons that 2 share got crushed because we pulled half of the 2 share liquidity out. This was meant to make 2 share go up. It just so happened that somebody happened to sell a bunch. Do you guys get what I'm saying? So you saw negative, like a lot of price action, a lot of price impact on the way down. But it works the same way on the way up. It works the same way on the way up. But yeah, so we use it from a banking. We do it from a banking like aspect. We are effectively taking money that is deposited with us. We have no way of contacting these people. We have made announcements in the past. When we talked about transplanting liquidity for redemption, you guys voted landslide move the liquidity over. Does that make sense? Like literally nobody gave a fuck. They're like, hey, autocratically take that money and move it to your DEX. Like it was like 90 to 10, something like that. Like you guys as the community like insisted we do this shit because one, you know, that DEX belonged to Matrix Money. So that was already bad enough. We described it again a couple of times. So I've talked about this. I've been very transparent and I've talked about it inside the circus a lot. Like, it's like like we have to, you know, it takes the money to like pay for this production. Yeah. It's not a lot of money, but like it still goes towards arguably, it goes to my groceries too. Yeah. I don't really have things paying for my food more regularly than that money. Yeah. But again, it's still like 60 grand. And to be clear, when we get to PEG, it's to my benefit to like 8 figures. Does that make sense? So like 60 grand compared to like $10 million. Does that make sense? Like I still don't like doing it, but I had to choose between pausing work on the project so I could go do a job, or I could just borrow from like a $150,000 pool of money that nobody cared about and hadn't been touched in months. Does that make sense to you guys? Do you guys see it? By the way, do you remember a contract called the lost inventory contract? The lost and found contract? The point of that contract is so we can return all that borrowed money to the wallets we owe it to. Do you guys understand that? Does that make sense? $96,000. That might be from like multiple years, but I would say over half of it. Yeah, over half of it. Yeah, over half of it has been like keeping this project moving forward for sure. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah. And Alessio, when I mean about like invested in the project, I'm talking about like I've also used that money to pay my rent for most of this year, so I can just continue to fucking be the full-time employee that works 80 hours a week on this. Do you guys know what I mean? Yeah. By the way, Pyre Producer is aware of all these things. Yeah. Yeah. But it's like literally, it's like the employment cost, you could say. December 2023. You know what, Alessio? I think the prices were lower back then, so it might be 96,000. I'll tell you this. From that amount, I've only seen maybe like $60,000. So that could just be that we sold at the bottom. Does that make sense? So like that money right there, it's not the same dollar amount because that dollar amount is based on, you know, today's price of AVAX. Does that make sense to you? Yeah, I would say it's closer to like 60,000. Like, Alessio, yeah, whatever. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, like again, we're talking about 100x now. Like, so like, yeah, but roughly over half that money is definitely been invested. Yeah, like I'll tell you this. This is not like, this is a watch I've owned since 2022. I have not bought a watch. I'll tell you this, you can't buy a Lambo for that amount either way. Does that make sense? Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Like this amount of money here doesn't even comp the cost in the first place. Do you guys know what I mean? Like I still probably have over 100 grand in debt for this project on top of the fact that I'm borrowing money from the farms. Being honest. Does that make sense? So like, yeah, this doesn't go towards luxuries. Did you guys think I was like, yeah, do we have any luxuries here? Yeah, we don't have luxuries. Yeah. That money, by the way, it bought things like this whiteboard. It bought things like this marker. Yeah. Legitimately. These are great markers, by the way. Yeah, worth every penny. Yeah, I think you guys benefited a lot from that investment. I think that, by the way, and remember, one of the reasons I talk about tomb fork investors like not being around anymore is because I looked at these farm contracts. They had lots of money in them, and this money, like, it didn't have an owner. Like, there was nobody coming to give a fuck. Yeah, Alessio, for real. Alessio, do you know what else was a big bet? Turning off decay. Turning off decay was a huge bet. Yeah, because now, you know, decay will keep your fucking price up, but now it's like, okay, now we have a way bigger total supply and the price is way down. So even bigger bet. So yeah, 100%. There has been, during this journey, there has never been any sort of indication that I should reduce the size of the bet because I only see proof that it actually does work. So in order to pull the best out of me, I make the requirement on me higher. Does that make sense? Like I am really driven mad about making this project work. And that's why I justified doing it. But every time I did it, it was again, it was anxiety because I'm like, we're fucking making it. Yeah, like it was never a good feeling doing that because whenever I did that, it's because we really needed more money, Alessio. Yeah, I'm just being honest. Yeah, we needed more money. Yeah, like Alessio, think about this. Had I gotten evicted, 6 months ago, like we would not be doing. Do you get what I mean? Yeah. Yeah, like, I'm not, yeah, this is, do you know that I didn't own a car for 18 months? Yeah. Yeah, like I sold my car in December of 2022, which was right after the Revelation Tour. Did you guys know that? Like, I did the Revelation Tour in December of 2022, and then I sold my car a week later for $7,000, for $7,500 bucks. Yep. Yeah, and I used that money to pay rent. I'm not joking. Because, like, I was making that bet on this project. So, it took us a fucking year just to get the proof of concept, right? Like, it took us it wasn't until December that meeting was available. Yeah. I did, yeah. Pyre Producer can tell you. I literally have a fucking electric scooter. So, I bought a $500 electric scooter, and I was using that. Legitimately, yeah. The scooter is now dead. Yeah. But anyways, yeah, we do have new transportation, if that makes sense. But also extremely affordable transportation. I did not buy a Lambo, just to be clear. Yeah. Does that make sense? That transportation allowed me to go to things that helped PyreSwap as well. Alessio, yeah, you bet. Alessio, I mean, that's the thing we drive around in to put stickers up. In fact, if you go into that car right now, the glove box is filled with PyreSwap stickers. Just being honest. But yeah, so I sold my car because I'm like, I work from home anyway, and I also live like maybe a walking distance from the grocery store. I live like a 3-minute walk to a grocery store. So I'm like, okay, most of the places I need to go I can walk to. So I'm like, I should just put my entire life behind this project. So if it's been difficult for you, I want you to know that I put myself through the gauntlet to make this happen. Like whatever it took. There has been so much things that I had to struggle through, and I knew that it was gonna be worth it. Like, you guys understand that this is gonna be $1 billion project. So if it just takes one crazy fucking economist to sell his car to make that happen and borrow 60 grand, is it 90 grand now? it'll be water under the bridge. Like, we're going to make it. We're going to exceed all expectations. Like, there's no way I wouldn't pay this price again. There's no way I wouldn't pay this price again. Like, all of it. All of it. It is unjust what goes on in this industry. I like that my ethics are being called into question because I want you to understand that I had to make difficult choices to just get to the point where I could point out that what some of the mainstream practices in this industry are nothing short of fraudulent. I've made announcements about this. I've talked about borrowing money. Yeah. Dr. Matt can tell you that I've talked, whenever I did this, I brought it up inside the circus for like 3 weeks in a row before I did it. Because, yeah, he'll tell you, like, I was obviously nervous about doing this. Yeah. It was like every single time I'm like, yeah, we borrowed from Dibs, by the way. So like Dibs, the Dibs farm, we did it too. And I'm like, fuck, I don't want to do this. Yeah. Olezio, okay, once you guys voted for it for redemption, like, it never got, like, asked about again. Like, it was more like, I just need to do this because there's no other way that this is going to work. By the way, I was not aware that I could do this. I was not aware that I had the ability to do this until the devs told me I could. So I didn't do it in 2023 at all. Yeah. So all of the AVAX in December, I think that was like other money. That might have been like, I don't know, from D-Share or Z-Share or other stuff. I also sold 3-Share. We ended up with like 800 3-Share. I had to sell 3-Share at the bottom for fucking AVAX so I could pay rent, you know? I'm not joking. Like, it sucked. Yeah. But like, I'm gonna fucking succeed at this. It doesn't matter. Like, if this is what it takes, that must mean that the prize is even more worth it than people expect. Anyways, yeah, we went a little extra. But if I answer your questions, and I'm glad that I got asked 2 difficult questions. Yeah. Well, Olezio, I think that in a 45-second tidbit, you know, I can't really do this whole, like... It's definitely good, though, by the way, whatever today is. Yeah, Wisdom Wednesday. This is that might be a good clip for, like, maybe a longer form video. We could call it the difficult questions video. Yeah, you know what I mean? But you know what? We could also just link to this version of the show. Yeah. Anyways. And by the way, yeah. And this is what today's date would like, yeah. By the way, I know that there's like 17 people. I have so many DMs and pings in this thing. And while I was getting accused of whatever I was getting accused of, like, I was only like working my ass off to make this work. We're going to win. Our team wins games. I want to thank you guys for coming to the PyreSwap show. And I want you guys to have a great rest of your day. We'll see you tomorrow at a time that has yet to be determined. Thank you.